podcast. We're going to start, so grab a coffee, water, and we'll have first presentation lead by Piotr, then small break, and our next session will go around. So we can start. Good.
Hi guys and girls. I didn't present to such higher audience over 20 years, so if I speak too loud, too low, or I start to speak some unknown languages, just excuse me, let me know, okay? So we're gonna talk a bit about security in very general aspect. It's about something that, it's not nothing new. We are not going to invent anything. It's rather reinventing the world, something that we all know about it, but it's something that is really in my mind for last few months. So we're going to talk about security in general, and then we're going to talk about the last
being recorded.
Thank you. Thank you. And the last few slides, it's really about what I am now kind of rethinking. About me, I am an IT guy. I am looking after Jamf corporate IT resources outside of US. I am Mac user since Tiger, I think. Professionally and personally, with short break for using Windows for 2 years in 2009 and 10. So, more or less, disclaimer. Everything here is my personal opinion. It's not a statement of Jamf at any point. I do not represent Jamf now or my team. So, Of course, security is kind of wide topic. We could have separate series. So just to reinforce, we are not discovering here anything. We are just covering small amount of security. So when we think about security, I like to think it about classical security when we have like company or enterprise or data center, and data center was place where we think about something that we have to protect. We were thinking about data center or our work environment as something that is safe, it should be protected, and something outside that is bad. Which, as we know now, it kind of doesn't make sense because we have BYO and people are bringing devices in, and we don't have. We rather have little control over what they are bringing in. So really do we now we are more thinking about workforce than about workplace, right? So we are more concentrated about users, and we would like to allow them to be creative, to be secure, to be working perfectly with whatever devices they like. And if they are using Apple devices, then better, right? So the major problem that we have here it's really hard to define what do we want to defend, right? So basically the thing that we are defending is information, right? But from one hand we have to defend that information, and we have to make that information available for users, right? Because we as sysadmins or IT people, that's our goal, to provide that information for our user and make it really accessible, which is bringing a lot of issues, right? We probably deal every day. So classical security was about protecting. Now we are talking about our end user computing, right? So we would think about protecting end computing classical, right? So installing firewall or enabling it in case of Mac or not. Then the difference that we have here is like. iOS and macOS, right? So if you think about iOS, what do you protect in iOS? What security stuff do you do on iOS? For example, what you can do on your mobile device to protect? Label PIN code, right? Or less. And when it comes to Mac, there is much more that you can do, right? So restrict some stuff like folders, create user accounts, protect it. You can install operating system. You can monitor activity. So you can encrypt data. For iOS, you don't have to do it because it's done right in the background. You can create backups. Do you create backups for your iOS devices? Right. All of us. Then the whole stuff of anti-malware, antivirus, as well as network, part of network. So do we allow our devices to connect to any network, just to ours? They user moving and everything. So that's kind of classical protection, right? Then there's another sort of security area where we are protecting our infrastructure on networking levels, like firewall, DNS, IPS. We protect services. Now have to protect our cloud as well, right? Because most of stuff is in the cloud. We have to monitor activity. We have to. The huge issue that I think now is identity. Because services are outside of our company, so we have to have as well our identity outside of company, which is bringing another security issue, because identity is really important, right? It's crucial part of security, like identity of user of company, and nowadays everything is kind of outside, right? Which is bringing a lot of interesting stuff. Then we have almost every service is mostly using TLS encryption. So some companies decrypt it so they can better protect their users. Then we have modern endpoint protection. So nowadays mostly every node has to be managed, right? And even if it's not the company, we would like to manage it, because even if it's via OEO, it's in our network, we would like to have some kind of at least visibility, what is installed, what is running on and allow, for example, connection to our network by providing them passwords, emails, and other stuff. Part of endpoint management is DEP, which is very specific to Apple. Another part of security is conditional access, dual factor authentication, endpoint and DNS protection, because if we have user outside of our network, if user is in a coffee shop or whatnot, then if we are really not protecting the network, because it's not our network, at least we can protect the DNS queries, so we are sure they are going into right direction, they are not hijacked or whatnot. Another point might be software whitelisting, blacklisting, monitoring as well. Certificate authorities are an important part of security that we sometimes overlook. Like default MAG is coming with over 300 of CAs, and do we really need all of them? And some are coming from countries that we really are not sure how they handle the CA stuff there. So, of course, security is not something that we can do, protect it and forget it. It's process. We have to constantly adapt to changing environment and adjust. That's what our work is. We cannot just stop and protect and think that everything is protected. We have to adjust and move forward with everything that is happening. And the important, and now we will start the presentation, is trust. So if you think, for example, about your browser, right? And the browser has as well built-in certificate or can use the system certificate coming with operating system. There is some trust that is done, right? So there are certificate authorities, and we kind of inherit this trust, right? As users, if we like to, we can remove them in many cases. In some cases, we cannot. But we have kind of choice, right? We can say, okay, the Firefox is coming with this set of certificates. I don't like this CA and this CA because there was bad news about this certificate sold to third party, and we don't trust that third party. So we can remove that CA, right? And take the consequence if something is not working or working, right? Another thing is about trust to users. So we make everything easy and accessible for users for one hand, but for the other hand, we would like to limit what users are doing, because we don't want to allow them to do things that are harmful for company and harmful for users themselves, right? So because we are taking that trust from user, we are giving the trust and taking the trust, we are kind of locking users into our own trust, right? And in case of Apple devices, we are locking user into trusting Apples, right? Or when we purchase Apple device, we are kind of locking ourselves into Apple because it's closed source. They have full control over operating system and the hardware. So few minutes ago, I was talking to my colleague, and we were talking about PowerBook that I have already for over 10 years, and this PowerBook is still working, and we are laughing that I cannot update it. But you can install Linux on it and everything. And now, if you think about, for example, new version of T2, it's gone, right? I don't think that my butterfly keyboard will survive 10 years, right? But even if it would, I will not have that possibility to use that hardware, right? So I will pay for hardware, for software, and this software is not mine, right? And this, I was talking about Firefox, but you can say the same. Okay, Peter, you are saying that you have to trust Apple, but it's the same with every vendor, right? It's the same with Jamf. When you purchase something from Jamf, I hope we do, you could say, dude, but we trust you the same way as we trust Apple, and what's your point? the point is you don't have to use Jump, right? But if you are into Apple, you don't have choice, right? So you cannot say, well, I will not run their operating system, I will not use their hardware. If you are an Apple user, you have no choice. But if you don't like Firefox, right, you can say, no, I will use Edge, right? So it's a bit different, right? We can say, but Microsoft is the same, right? But you can buy any laptop and install Linux on it, still, right? For bigger amount of time because they are locking out FE and other stuff, right? But still, you can buy hardware and run something else on it, which you might want to do or not, but still there is that possibility. So the problem that is now kind of appearing to me is like, we have this problem with surveillance that all countries are introducing. And there are big examples like China, where they have total control of what is coming to the country and what is going out from the country. And Apple is China, it's third biggest Apple market or second biggest Apple market, right? So the question is security that Apple is doing working the same way in China as it's working outside of China? Because if it is, they wouldn't be able to sell their devices there, right? Because that's what government expect. They expect to access to every data that is on every device, and every traffic should be accessible. So some, for example, activation services that Apple is using worldwide are not working from China. They are blocked. They are using different set of servers just for China, right? So we might expect that there is some stuff going there. Of course, it's not clear and open, right? It's not hard to understand why. But it's not about China, right? Australia now, we know that they have very strict surveillance law that every company operating there, they have to allow authorities to access to any data on any device, and any communication should be possible to intercept, right? And again, it's not about China, it's not about Australia. In Europe, we have as well a lot of surveillance laws implemented everywhere, right? Not mentioning America, South America, and other countries, right? So we as users are now logged into Apple, and Apple is controlling totally their ecosystem, controlling their hardware, controlling their software. And we know that they cannot protect us fully as they promise, right? Because law of country is saying that authorities should be able to access data, right? They should have law, they should have possibility to access that data. So this is a very interesting question that we can ask. How sure we can be that our data is protected, and how sure we cannot be, right? So when it comes to Apple, there is a lot of stuff that Apple is doing in the background. It's not documented, right? Because it's proprietary information. But we know that every purchase you do using iTunes will have UUID in it. You can really track who is purchasing. So if you buy your device in shop, right, as person using credit card from Apple, you are easily identified who are you, what are you buying, when are you buying, and then everything what you do outside of this is as well identifying you as user very strictly, right? So on the beginning it was only iOS, right? Especially cellular iOS. So when you purchase phone, your ISP should have data stored about the communication that you do, about web pages that you visit, and other stuff. And there was a lot of data that was sent over that communication. And as end user, it's really hard to, you need to really have really specialized equipment. If you are curious to see what is happening over cellular communication, do any one of you has any tool that can allow you to sniff cellular communication with your phone? To see what is sent, what is received, and how it's working? I don't think so, right? Because it's very specialized equipment. With Mac, it's much more easier. just to see what is happening, right? Because you can connect it over wire or wireless and intercept communication and at least have a look what is happening with the network, but with your phone it's really hard. It's easier if you do it over Wi-Fi, but then you are not sure if the communication that is happening over cellular and wireless is the same, right? So, and we know that information that is connected to you as individual is sent whenever you do purchase, whenever you activate your device, and whenever you do other activities. And we know if we observe traffic from devices, the traffic is encrypted for most of stuff, not encrypted, for example, for recovery. So if you capture recovery process, you can see that serial number of your device is sent in plain text and other stuff. So if you observe it, there is a lot of traffic, and we know that Apple is using Akamai caching services, right? With the whole glory of Akamai and great job that they are doing to speed up our network. We can imagine a situation that even if we trust Apple, right? Because Apple is trusted vendor and we build trust on Apple, we can have situation that, for example, Akamai servers are compromised or misconfigured, which is probably unlikely, but it's another event, right, that can happen, that can lower the security of those devices. But there is another thing. Those servers, the Akamai servers and Apple servers, but let you think about Akamai only, they are stored in ISP's location, data center, or IPX location in countries that you wouldn't really like to have your data to be stored, and they are cached there everywhere. So situation that not mentioning that Akamai can use the information that Apple is using, UUID, because they would know, okay, this device is Apple and it's calling Apple, but they have as well our traffic, like when we are opening any other web pages that are using Akamai servers, so they can easily link those two things with you as user, right, and sell your data as, you know, as everyone is doing now. There is another part. It's about biometric data that is stored in those devices, which is the problem from security point of view. It's stored securely, hopefully, in something that we really don't know how it's working, right? As an user, there is no possibility for independent researchers to investigate the hardware, right, and the software. And from the history, we know that low-level security stored in, like, you know, BIOS or kind of hardware was often vulnerable to a lot of bad things, right? So this is bringing another concern to the whole piece. As I said, I am Apple user for a lot of times, and I have huge trust in Apple, but it's kind of I start to realize more and more how difficult it is for me if you look at security of those devices, if you really don't know what is happening in the background, like, because even if you are not programmer, you like to play with Linux, you can open the source code or kernel, do some search for something and find it, right? Most of us wouldn't be doing it, right? But there are people that are doing it, and basically it's helping the whole community, right? To improve everything and to find bugs and other stuff, right? So that's what kind of started to really bother me for last few months. And it's really hard to find a lot of information about it, which is not strange, right? Because it's kind of proprietary and well hidden behind it. So, you know, it's, I think, worth to discuss it and be aware, especially now that you think about services that Apple is doing, like with Goldman Sachs and other big banks to do credit cards, right? It was announced a few days ago. So you would have not only Apple Pay stuff visible, which Apple is saying that they will not have visibility to, but, you know, it's bringing another mix, right, to the whole ecosystem. So I am not sure if it was useful, but I hope it will it will be good starting point for some discussion. I don't have end slide. So just to sum it up, closed source, right? Not only closed source for hardware but for software, which is great because they do beautiful devices that work great, but you don't have that visibility. The thing is, like for iOS, basically if you would like to control iOS, the only way you can control is by profiles, right? More or less, because the switches, there is not that much in the things that you can slide here and there, which you still can, but it is what it is. The thing is that devices require activation and network connectivity, right? After, if they are new, sometimes if they discharge, and sometimes after the software updates. Few times in the past, after a software update, devices required activation again, right? They wouldn't work with your network connection. And this is bringing us to Mac, right? Which is now more iOS-ified, right? And what will happen, we will have as well less possibilities to secure it, right? If you are curious and you would like to check what is happening in Mac, you can use dtrace, you can capture packets, you can do other stuff. And if it's gonna be more like iOS, what will happen, right? We will have few bars like set password or not set password, and Face ID, and that's it. So, and again, it's hardware that we purchase, right? And that we should freely use, which with how it's happening now, more going into iOS side, which could bring another worry, right? That we'll have two devices that we really don't have control of totally, right? So, that's it.
We are ready for
So we'll have 2 of them, and we'll have free presentation in Krakow. So stay tuned. And now, Laurent.
Thank you. Just adjust my displays. Okay. Thanks for having me. Tonight I'm going to talk about something easy, certificates. Everyone knows everything about certificates?
Yeah, that's easy.
Okay, let's go. Let's go and have some beers. And before we talk about certificates, I want you to do a reminder about some cryptography. Don't worry, there won't be any mathematics. I'm bad at mathematics. So just a little reminder, because to understand certificates we need a few of these concepts. So cryptography, who knows cryptography? Okay, explain. Too late. No, it all started for years, centuries, we've used what are called symmetric keys. I'm pretty sure you've all played that when you were a kid to try to obfuscate some text you were exchanging with some friends in the class by just moving the letters in the alphabet. Never done that? Like A equals B, B equals C. You know who invented have chosen a method to a key, way to encrypt, you need to exchange that with the other person you're talking to in a secure way. And that's been the big problems of all the governments and anyone using cryptography for centuries. How do you give your send it by mail? So the easiest way is to meet in person and say, okay, we're going to use that, and that. But to be very secure, a symmetric key should be only used once. Because if you use it more than once, some very smart people will start to make statistics about how you walk your messages and try to find what you're trying to hide. And they will succeed because they're very smart. Based on, for example, what is the most used letter in Polish? I know in French it's E, but A. So try to find in an obfuscated text the number of occurrences of one letter and say, okay, I'm going to guess this is A. You have already one letter, then move to the second most used and so on. And try to see if you can read the text. So exchanging keys has always been a problem. For example, the American government had a special agency dedicated to travel all around the world to give keys to their embassies. So there was a guy traveling with a case full of keys. Amazing job. Looks like me. So this is what it looks like. Let me introduce Bob and Alice. For those who don't know, Bob and Alice are always the most famous people in cryptography. Bob wants to speak. And they decided, okay, our secret key is going to be that. And now when they want to send the text to each other, they just write a clear text, use the secret key, the text becomes encrypted and undecipherable. And when Alice receives the text, she's just using the same key the other way to open the text and read it. And she can see the love letter from Bob and say, oops. So, as you can imagine, that doesn't scale up, especially nowadays. Do you imagine, you see yourself going to everyone you want to talk to and say, this is my key. So we need to find a way, and hopefully in the 70s, two brilliant groups of people found ways to help us and invented what became known as public-private key infrastructures and cryptography, also called asymmetric keys. So it started with Diffie and Hellman, who invented a way to exchange the secret over an unsecured communication. I will not go into the details. And then Rivest, Shamir, and Adelman invented really what is called asymmetric encryptions and public key infrastructures. Maybe if you look at the initials of their name, that rings a bell. RSA. Yes, that's them. So the company. And I promised I wouldn't do any mathematics. I'm just going to mention this relies on using, also not only that, but using very, very large prime numbers. We all know the prime numbers from school. We all hated them probably, but so if you take two prime numbers, you multiply them together, you get a result, and how long does it take to go back to these two prime numbers? This is your security. The longer it takes, the better. And also, what brings us is two keys instead of one. One that is called the public key, and one that is called the private key. And as the name says, give your public key to anyone. You don't care. And even publish it on the internet, it doesn't matter. Keep your private key for you. Never give it to anyone. If someone gets your private key, consider your communication is lost. And once I have the private key of someone, I can use it to lock my message. But that key can only be used to lock. It can never be used to unlock. Only the private key can unlock what has been locked with the public key that is associated. Does it make sense? Imagine the key, the public key is a lock, a physical lock. The private key is the key that goes with that lock. I give you locks as much as you want. You put your message in the box, close the box, lock it with the lock. Now that you've locked it, you can't open it anymore. Then you give me the box, you send it through FedEx, whatever. I get it, I use my secret private key to open the lock, and I can read your message. Let's go back to our two. That was fun. So Netscape said, okay, we don't want to start a war on that too. Let's put that as a standard. They gave it to the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force, best name in the world in my opinion. And that became, well, not exactly that, but SSL 3.1 became TLS 1.0 because obviously we needed to change the name to make things easier. Just for the record, SSL does no longer exist. We should not say SSL anymore. SSL 3.x has been declared deprecated 2015. And now we are at version, in fact, 1.3, forgot it on my slide, sorry. But mostly what you will use is TLS 1.2. 1.0 and 1.1 should no longer be used because, once again, too old. Sure. Oh, sorry, I don't speak loud enough.
On the WebEx when you.
Oh, sorry for the, sorry WebEx, sorry.
No, you're not.
Uh-huh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
I think so.
Good. You want me to start over? No. Now let's talk about the real subject, certificates. And the main thing to know about a certificate is that a certificate is an identity over the network. Here we have an example, but I like to compare certificates to a passport. Your passport is your identity, your way to prove who you are. Unless you have a fake passport, but let's not go into that. And the same way on your passport. So why do I have Peru's passport? No, it's not because I like Peru, it's just because I found very nice pictures on the internet that you can use without, because if you look for passport pictures on the internet, don't do that. It's awful what people put on the internet. So that comes from, it was actually the French national prince, which makes passport for Peru, and they made an example, so it's a fake passport that is official and with very nice pictures, that's why it's for Peru. So don't worry about the name, it's introduced every year. So the same way on your passport you have information, you have the same information on the certificate. So your passport mentions your name. Hey, look at that. The certificate mentions your name too, the name of the server. And a passport also has a provider who made the passport. In the case of the passport, it's República del Perú. And in the case of the certificate, we can see that it was issued, in that case, by Amazon. So, same thing, name, who made it. Then we also have a serial number. And your passport has a number. And you also have that date of issue and date of expiry. Same for a certificate. Certificate is valid from that date to that date. So if you have a certificate that is expired, your system will not trust it anymore. The same way if you try to go to another country with an expired passport, there's a great chance they're going to say, hey, bad luck. And also, if you try, well, it should never happen with a passport, but it happened that sometimes you get a certificate that is not yet issued because, well, it's just your computer is back in time. And it's not trusted either. So, see, there's a lot of common things between a certificate identity somewhere. We even have some fancy things that would relate to, where is it? I forgot to put it on my picture, so sorry. There are hash things that you can see. Also. And the same way, you will trust a passport because you say, oh, it's issued by this government, it looks well good, and and things like that. The same way for the certificates. If someone shows you a certificate, you have, before you can trust it, you're gonna say, who gave you certificate financial, and you're gonna say, okay, it comes from this authority authority, and for example, Amazon is a case of my example, and oh yeah, I already trust Amazon. So that's why people like to rely on so yeah, trusted groups, these are the trusted groups you have on macOS by default. They listed made by Apple. So they don't trust Apple. Sometimes they add some new trusted groups, sometimes they remove. Why would we remove the trusted groups? That's a good example. So usually they remove the ones that are expired, but that doesn't make sense. And also we remove the trusted authority that is no longer trusted. And trust me, to become a trusted authority takes time, but to become an untrusted doesn't take time. It can go very fast. It happened recently. What's the name of that company? Symantec, that was not their full CA, that was one of their CAs. Now, a company in Israel that has been purchased by a Chinese company, but no one knew, and they started issuing bad certificates. No, not Rapid SSL, whatever. It also happened a few years ago to a company, DigiNotar, in the Netherlands. What happened to them is that one day they made a mistake, and the private key of their root CA was published. Well, someone got his hand on the private key, which means that he could create certificates for anything. That would be trusted because it would come from this. Or what? Did you know? Not Amazon. So suddenly everyone in the world, Microsoft, browsers and Apple said, okay, did you know? Move away. You no longer exist. So how does it work when in real life you make a connection? So you're on your, so you need an iMac Pro to do that. Otherwise it doesn't work, obviously. And the server can only run on an Xserve, obviously. So when you connect it to a server and you say, hey, are you www.jamf.com? Same way when you go to a country and say, hey, who are you? Oh, James Bond. No, not that one. And the server is going to say, yeah, I am. Look at my certificate. This is my paper. This is my passport. Look at it. So we get the certificate and we start looking, say, okay, do I trust? Okay, so it's Jamf. Yeah, same name. Great. And it comes from Amazon. Yes, I have it in my trusted roots. So the important thing is that you get a certificate from a well-known and trusted certificate authority. So sometimes it's a bit more complex, and not sometimes, most of the time, you will never get a certificate coming directly from the root certificate itself. It will go through an intermediate one. The reason is that this one is what I call a burner, like burner phones. Because it's hard to get that root certificate trusted by vendors. So you want to make sure you will never lose it. So you make an intermediate that is trusted, that is signed by this one, and then you issue all the certificates using that. So if ever something happens to that one, you burn it, create a new one. You have a hard time because you have to reissue certificates to everyone, but at least you're still trusted as the authority. Now let's have fun. I told you it takes a lot to calculate encryption keys, so I have a cluster of Xserve. I love these pictures. So let's have a look at how it works really when you connect to an HTTPS website. It works for anything TLS more or less the same way. So first, you connect and your browser say, hey, I want to talk to you in a secure way, and this is what I can do in terms of cryptography. I know all these protocols. I'm super good. And the server will say, yeah, fantastic. Let me introduce myself. This is me. Here's my certificate to prove it. The certificate will contain the public key, and we'll also send the intermediate certificate for obscure reasons, and give you a list of okay, you gave me your TLS version you can do and ciphers and blah blah. This is what I can do. Let's take the highest ones of each to make sure we have a high level of security. Once we receive that, first, we check that the certificate is good. So go back to trusted roots and so on, say, okay, yes, I trust you, now we can go on and keep talking. Like I said, Pink Floyd. And your browser is going to create what is called a pre-master key, randomly. And that pre-master key is going to be encrypted using the public key of the server. Which means that now, you, as the browser, you keep a copy, you're not stupid, and only the server can read it. And then you send that to the server. Remember, we're still not talking on secured network, on a secured protocol. We haven't decided yet how to do that. But our connection, what we send is protected in a way, because only the private key of the server can read that. So we've locked the box, sent it over FedEx. Obviously, it's a bit faster than FedEx. The server receives that, using its private key, is going to look at the content and say, okay, now I have a pre-master key. And you've just observed an interesting way of exchanging a secret over an unsecured network. 1976, Diffie and Hellman. Both have the same pre-master key. Technically, they have a symmetry key. But as engineers like to make things a bit more complex, based on that pre-master key and the ciphers and the TLS version, they're going to create a master key. And as they're starting with the same things, and they're using the same calculations, they're going to get the same result. And based on that master key, because obviously it wouldn't be funny, they're going to create session keys. So all of these are symmetric keys calculated the same way on each side. And using that, now they can talk using a secure communication. Does it make sense? You don't have to remember that.
How long does it take?
Shorter and shorter these days. Remember that almost everything you do nowadays is using that. Even on your phone, on whatever. I made it very long. It's when you click on an HTTPS link and you see the green padlock, it's done. You're at that level. But it's not free. Security is not free. Now a question, should you use a self-signed certificate? Well, I have an authoritative answer. No. Well, he said no one day. Publicly. That's just a quote. Why not? Because if you use a self-signed certificate, it's only trusted by you. If you decide to do a test, yes, you can use that. And once you've said, I trust that certificate, everything is encrypted the same way. But it's not a good user experience to show a self-signed certificate. Because every browser will say, oh, your communication is not secured. Technically, it's not true, but it could be. So always rely on a trusted CA. Either a public one, or in large companies, you probably have an internal one. But you will need to deploy it everywhere. So another big question is, how do we get certificates? Well, there are multiple methods. I'm just going to focus on what is done in enterprise. In terms of public certificates, you can go to various vendors like Symantec. I'm looking for the names, I'm sorry, blanking on the name. The most common one these days, you know which one it is? Let's Encrypt, which is free. but you have to renew them every 3 months. But you can automate it with scripts. Very, very useful. So that's why I say you don't need self-signed certificates. In enterprise, we often need to give certificates to endpoints, to computers, to iOS devices. And because of security, we often face that. Most common things I face in my job at Jamf, where I go to companies that say, oh yeah, we're using certificates for Wi-Fi authentication, 802.1x. Great. And what are you using? We have an ADCS server on the network, and yeah, we issue certificates to every device that's perfect, that works like a charm. Okay, how do I get a certificate? Well, so in order to get to the network, I need a certificate. But in order to get a certificate, I need to be on the network. Chicken, egg, chicken. But in its infinite wisdom, engineering has created stuff. Oh, my bad. Sorry, I need to make a small change to my slides. Where's that one? Forgot to skip some slides. Let's go back. And the first that was created is called SCAP. Who knows SCAP? Who knows what SCAP means? I have many propositions. And the winner is Simple Certificate Enrollment Protocol. If you've been doing anything related to networking long enough, you will know that anything ending with protocol and starting with simple is a lie. Never trust. Never trust an engineer that says, my protocol is simple, blah, 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 protocol. Never. Never. Well, it always starts simple. And then other engineers, because as engineers, we like to make things more funny or complex. We start adding stuff on top of it. That's why I would like that it's Santa creates and just parents, but unfortunately it's not. So simple certificate enrollment protocol was created by Cisco in order to issue certificate to devices automatically without any human intervention. That sounds great. But then some people who live in a dark cave with a sign on their door that says InfoSec said, that's not good, let's make it more complex. But let's have a look at how it works when it's still simple. So for example, I take the example of Jamf and devices, it can work with any MDM. We go to the SCAP server using what is called a challenge, and it's a static challenge, so it's always the same password if you want. And we say, hey, I want a certificate for that device. Certificate server gives the certificate. Oh, it's in French, sorry. Learn French. Configuration profile with challenge. So then we send that to the device. I'm so sorry, I forgot to translate that side. Maybe a few more. And the device will go to the SCAP server and say, hey, someone told me that if I use that secret password, I can get a certificate for free. And as the SCAP server is a very nice guy, he says, yeah, sure. There's your certificate. The chances you will use that in your life are very, very, very low. Now there's the English version. In complete disorder. What did I do with my slide? Okay. So another way that you might use is NDES. Who knows NDES? Never heard of it? So NDES is what Microsoft calls SCAP. Because Microsoft has another tool called SCAP. that is not related to certificate. System center, endpoint protection, something like that. So if you ever have a Microsoft shop that says we want to use SCEP, never look for Microsoft SCEP. Look for Microsoft NDES, otherwise it wouldn't be funny again. What they have with NDES is called a dynamic challenge. So you can connect to a web page in order to get the challenge that will change every time you refresh the page. And then you can use that challenge for an hour and things like that. So basically what we do at Jump and most MDM vendors is we connect to that page, scrape the page, and issue the dynamic challenge to the device that can go and do say, hey, I know the secret password that is only valid for an hour. Can I get my certificate? And of course we get it. We can also use sometimes a proxy for that. And in that case, the device will issue the request and will only the server, one server will talk to the SCEP server in order to get the certificate. And we will transmit it to the device later on. And of course, it works the same with dynamic challenge. Let's make it simple. Another big case is Active Directory Certificate Service. So this is Microsoft PKI that's running on Active Directory. You will often see it in large organizations. And most common scenario is you need to have a device that is in the Active Directory domain. And then you will say, hey, you know what? You need a certificate. You need to go to that server. And it will use the Kerberos authentication and say, I want a certificate and get it back. That doesn't solve our main issue, which is how do we get on the network, but this is the way it works. And at Jamf, we have also what we call a connector in order to do that on behalf. So we have a nice guy in the middle that will get the certificate for us, and we will be able to send them to devices. There are many other ways to get certificate. I don't want to bother you too much. I think I've been long enough. I hope you were interested. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. No questions? No prime numbers? Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Piotr. We'll post some more information about the next meetup soon, both in Katowice and in Krakow. I don't know if Team Adrian is planning any integration after the meetup, but if you want to grab some drinks, then gather and go. So thank you again. Thank you, and see you next time.